Hello, my friends. It is Tino, here to play some more NintenDONE. Well, I suppose I'll be playing Super Nintendo, but the series is called NintenDONE. And we're going to pick up where we left off, which is the Final Fantasy Rock Block Party. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to jump into FF2 really quickly. I already have a game going of this. That may or may not be the file, but doesn't matter. So I'll just basically flap my yap a whole bunch while we're doing all the intros for these different games. This game, Final Fantasy II, or as it was released in Japan, Final Fantasy IV, this is the archetypal role-playing game. Turn-based strategy. Each character has a very sort of specific role that they fit into. There's, essentially there's a specific healer. There's a specific magic user. There's a physical sort of tank character. There's a dragoon who's got like a jump attack. There's a karate master who's sort of like the monk, specializes in punches and stuff like that. So this game actually has a really fantastic story. Well, okay, I'll be honest with you, the story's not that great, but because it's very nostalgic for me, I really like it. There's essentially crystals scattered all over the world. And there's some sort of negative force that's collecting them all, and turns out it, of course, jeopardizes the fate of the world, and blah, 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 blah. But, like I was saying, the gameplay in this one is essentially your typical turn-based RPG. There's sort of like a big menu at the bottom in the battle screen. Each character sort of selects a specific command, and you just kind of take turns. It's solid gameplay. It's the tried and true turn-based RPG formula. Very, very good stuff in terms of solid combat. But the thing is, this game is actually almost all the Final Fantasies on Super Nintendo suffer from random battle baloney, as I like to call it. There's tons of random battles they're essentially unavoidable because you can't really see where the enemies are. They just sort of appear, and holy crap, you're fighting things. So this can be good and bad. I guess there's some sort of counter or something like that tells the game when to put you into a random battle. So this is what the battle screen looks like. I actually don't have access to any of the moves he uses right now, but I guess he's on the airship, so they have these crazy firebomb moves. Anyway, this game is really fantastic RPG turn-based goodness. Very fun, rewarding, unique characters. It's pretty challenging. You have to, strengthen your characters pretty significantly in between areas, stay on top of their leveling, and yada yada yada. But overall, very, very fun game. Like I said, it's pretty rewarding too. You put some time in, you'll get some out of it. Lots of cool summons in this game. It's good stuff. Very, very good stuff. Let's see, what else can I mention about this game? There's two world maps. There's the above world and the underground. There's a significant event that happens kind of midway, and it's like, oh, we need to go underground, okay. And so you do. Yada, yada, yada. The game essentially navigates just like any other thing. It's sort of like a top-down view. Kind of the status quo for the RPG genre, at least on this console. But it's good stuff. There's chests over there on the right, very easy to get to. Pop open the door, blah, blah, blah. This game has a couple of cool secrets in it. The magics are very appropriate. Summons are cool, as I mentioned. Each character has a very sort of distinct sort of role that they fit into. It's good stuff. Very, very good stuff. Okay, I think I've flapped enough about this Final Fantasy, so let's go ahead and move on. Actually, the next one in the series is not what... It doesn't really follow the order properly. Because that is actually... Final Fantasy II is actually considered Final Fantasy IV, I'm going to skip over this Final Fantasy III for just a moment, because... it's actually number 6, so we will get to that very quickly. Final Fantasy V is the quote-unquote in-betweener game. Final Fantasy V was actually not released you know what? I might be putting my foot right in my mouth, but I'm pretty sure that Final Fantasy V was not released in the States. I don't think it made it stateside until it was translated and put into a... let's see, I think it was on a PlayStation 1 combination pack of Final Fantasy 4 and 5. But Final Fantasy V is a very sort of unique character in the Final Fantasy universe. Number 5 features the updated job system that was introduced on the original Nintendo console in the Japanese release of Final Fantasy III. These numbers are kind of a pain in the butt to keep up with, so I apologize if there's any confusion. But basically, the way to know what you're dealing with is if you're talking about United States, as in, you know, Western civilization, the United States only received essentially 3 Final Fantasy games. They got Final Fantasy II, as it was called, and it was numbered 2, but it was actually the Japanese release of 4. They also got Final Fantasy III, which was essentially the Japanese release of number 6. And this game, I'm almost positive, did not make it stateside until much later. And also, I believe the Super Nintendo, at least in the United States, also got Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, which sometimes is numbered Final Fantasy I Mystic Quest, just for the benefit of us silly English speakers. But that's basically not true at all. There were essentially 3 previous Final Fantasy games that were for the original Nintendo console, never came to the US. It's actually really hard to find a ROM of said game. I wonder if the volume is okay. It sounds a little loud, but I think we're all right. So anyway, yeah, 3 Final Fantasies did not make it to the United States in the Nintendo era. So the third one of those actually was the first game to have the job system introduced. And this game is essentially an updated job system-based RPG. So what that means is, as you progress, you'll acquire more jobs. And the jobs function almost like a second sort of XP. Your character will level up as you gain experience from fighting and stuff like that. But the thing is, the jobs themselves also have a sort of experience bar. It's called ability points. And I apologize if you heard that chime. That's another video finishing rendering. So yeah, the job system is pretty cool. It's essentially, you'll accrue these crystals that will give you a new job as you progress further in the game. The jobs level up kind of like the characters do. Each fight that you encounter will drop experience and ability points. The ability points rack up and increase the level of your job. So this may sound a little confusing, but it actually works out in a very cool way. In my personal opinion, I think that the job system is one of the best systems in a Final Fantasy game. It works out so well. The way that it's very unique is that when you master a job, you essentially learn the abilities of the job. And as you switch jobs or, you know, quote unquote, reevaluate your character, what you can do is you can combine jobs in unique ways. So, for example, the monk is a job in this game that relies on having no weapons, fighting with bare hands, and having huge health totals and countering. So the monk does a lot of physical damage, and when the monk gets attacked, it counters. So if you max out the monk job, what you can do is you can give the counter ability to any other job you decide to roll, any other specific character that has, or any other job that the character who mastered it has also learned. So this is actually really, really cool because, I mean, this sounds so loud in my headphones. I hope it's not as loud as it sounds. And if it is, I apologize. Maybe it was just that part. So I'm just going to flap a little bit more about this just because I want to get this out of the way. So once you learn or max out a job or get it to a certain point, the abilities become are learned and you can apply them to other jobs. The really cool thing about this, I wonder if... Oh, I can't actually go to the job menu. Right now I actually don't have a job. And that's actually a significant thing because that is considered another job type, being jobless. In the Japanese version, it's called supa or suppa or something like that. Basically, it just means that your character does not have a specialization. And that's actually really cool because that specific role will have all the passive abilities of every job you've mastered. So, for example, if your character masters the monk and then decides to roll a white mage, the white if you set your character to the jobless role or the supa or whatever you want to call it, that jobless situation will have the passive abilities of the monk. So if you've got if you master monk and white mage, essentially you'll have the passive bonuses of the extra MP of the white mage, and you'll also instinctively have the counterattack ability, which is really cool. So as you can see, it gets pretty heinous. As you start maxing out more jobs, the jobless character becomes wildly overpowered. You can start dual-wielding things. You'll start getting preemptive battles all the time. You'll counterattack every time. You'll have extra MP. You'll have extra HP as you learn more jobs and accrue the skills that are innate with them. Even things like being able to dash and see traps in the floors and not take damage from trap floors. It all racks up and it becomes extremely potent towards the end of the game. Also, why the hell is this character named Butts? Who came up with the name for this guy? Butts? Really? His name is plural Butts. There are many butts in this guy's name. Also, I want you to notice that over on the right here, there's these interesting double syllables, like Butzel, Butzili, Butzili. I'm making Italian for this game. Anyway. Another interesting thing about this game is there are only 4 characters. Most of the other games have a very large cast of characters that you can swap in and out. You can sort of adjust your party as you want to. Specifically the later games. Final Fantasy IV, there's no character swapping. You're just given certain characters at certain points. In this game, you'll only meet 4 characters that are playable, and they'll be in your party for essentially the entire game. And that plays into this job system. You don't really want to have, a 12 different character cast when everyone needs to learn multiple jobs. So it works out. The story in this game, I have to admit, though, is a little bit looser than Final Fantasy IV. 4, I think, has a little bit better of a story, not as much flexibility in the character customization. Essentially none in the character customization. But this game is chock full of being able to sort of flesh out whatever roles you want your characters to do. It's cool. You can have both females be knights and the guys be bards and dancers, or vice versa. It's really fun. So, okay, I've definitely yacked about this game enough. So let's move on to the next one, which is Final Fantasy VI. Or, if you are American, it's numbered as Final Fantasy III. And this is regarded to be the crowning gem of role-playing games for the Super Nintendo. It really has the best story of all the games. It also has an interesting combat system in that each character has their own specific method of attacking, but magic and summons and stuff like that are all essentially divvied out by the player, by yourself, in however a way you see fit. So basically, as you accrue espers, as they're called in this game, which are the summons, you can then junction the esper to a character, and as the character gains XP, they will learn the specific spells and abilities that are innate to the esper. So, for example, I think one of the first ones you get is I'm really fuzzy on the names of the summons in this game. I think I'm going to have to do a Let's Play of this, though, because it's just phenomenal. And I might have to do it at Final Fantasy V also, but I'm not positive just yet. We got to beat 4 before I get ahead of myself. Anyway, this game, Phenomenal story. Very interesting junctioning system. So, like I was saying, one of the first espers you get will teach you Fire 1, Ice 1, and I think it's either Lit or Bolt 1. I forget what it's called. But basically, it's just a simple matter of picking which characters you want to learn what spells and junctioning the according esper. It's really cool because if you're if you stay on top of junctioning all your espers and you're diligent about leveling up your characters, you can basically give every character every spell. Kind of like in Final Fantasy V, you can master every job and then your character will have every single passive ability, which makes them just wildly overpowered. Fun stuff. And if you're in the mood for casual playthroughs, I highly recommend that you go ahead and grab a couple of Pro Action Replay or Game Genie codes for these games. Sometimes because they're so lengthy and they're a little bit dated, it's to your benefit to just do sort of a casual playthrough, cheat a little bit, make it nice and easy, maybe start with really great gear or something like that. My personal opinion, I normally don't like to cheat, but if it's a game that I've played a lot, for example, any of these Final Fantasy games, I've played them all at least 2 or 3 times fully through. So at this point, when I play them again, I like to, have my characters max level very quickly. And, like, if it's a job system game, I like the jobs to learn quickly. And yada, yada, yada. Anyway, this game is also the most graphically impressive, I would say, out of all the Final Fantasies for this era. Pretty cool stuff. And right off the bat, you start off with ridiculously powerful moves. This seems to happen in most Final Fantasy games. It's very interesting. Well, not in Final Fantasy V. In 5, you actually start off as a level 1, and you don't have any impressive abilities. But in 4, the first time you see Cecil in a battle, he has all these crazy abilities that you don't have access to, which I thought was kind of interesting. Oh, I can't go this way. Gotcha. But in this game, too, you start off riding this sort of Magitech armor type thing, and they're essentially ridiculously powerful, and they make this sort of intro part really easy, but it definitely doesn't last very long. And I want to keep the top character healed, but I don't necessarily have any qualms about letting Wedge and Biggs die, even though they're my pals from a later game. Interestingly enough, in the subsequent Final Fantasy game, in Final Fantasy VII, which is the first one for PlayStation 1, there's a Biggs and a Wedge character right off the bat, and they are friends of yours for a significant portion of the early game. Kind of interesting stuff. So yeah, if you're a role-playing game fan and you like classic games, retro games, and you've never played the Final Fantasies, I highly recommend them to you. They're really quite a bit of fun. And like I said, each one is very unique. Final Fantasy IV has a fairly rich and interesting storyline, a little bit of intrigue, very archetypal characters. Final Fantasy V has... You essentially have complete control over the roles your characters play in terms of spellcasting, melee, tank, monk, dragoon, summoner, caller, enemy skill. It's all there. It's really cool. And in this game, each character has a very unique sort of attack style, but they all tend to... they're all comparable to each other, with the exception of... It's not Edward. Edward was in Final Fantasy IV. Oh, his name begins with an L, and I can't remember. Not Logan. It's something like that. He's a blonde character in this game. He's the only one who sort of peters out as you get further. He unfortunately has these sort of tech skills, and they don't level in damage with him, which basically means that he starts to suck after a little while, which is terrible, but hey, it is what it is. Anyway, this is your old pal Tino telling you to play some Final Fantasy goodness. And, yeah, So I think I yacked on about the Final Fantasy games enough. Thank you guys for watching. I hope it was at least a little bit informative. Just a quick little summarization. At least about the numbers anyway. In Japan, there was a 1, 2, and 3 in the regular Nintendo era, the NES system. And in Japan, the Super Nintendo had 4, 5, and 6. But stateside, we only got 4, which was labeled as 2 for us, and 6, which was labeled as 3 for us. Once you hit PlayStation, all the games become synonymous and sequential again. Once you hit Final Fantasy VII, every game from that point on, the American and Japanese and European releases are all the same. Makes it a lot easier to keep that in mind. But there's a lot of confusion in the earlier years, so hey, hopefully that helped you out a little bit. Just saying, if you like RPGs and you haven't played these, rhyming is awesome, and you should totally check them out. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next episode. Stay tuned. There's going to be some more NintenDONE. Isn't it grand? See you then.